This programme contains explicit sexual references that some people may find offensive.
We're recording if you just want to introduce yourself.
My name's Lauren, I'm 22 years old, I'm currently at university and I'm a sex worker.
Lauren is one of the 67% of students at university who has considered going into the sex industry in order to pay for living expenses such as food and bills. Does this figure shock you? If so, perhaps it's to do with the fact that student sex work just isn't spoken about a lot.
She been in your bedroom, I know that. Feeling her on your skin. Think I don't know where your head's at. Where do I begin?
My name's Alice Dale, and I've been following the experiences of students who work in the sex industry. The stories you will hear are real, but some of the names and voices of those involved have been changed to protect their identities. In this podcast, we'll be looking at the taboo around student sex work, the arguments that people have formed on the subject. Should students be using sex work to support themselves at uni? And why do some students feel that this is the only option for their income?
Wrapping your fingers around her. Late at night, drinking. You let it linger. You put it.
University, the stepping stone to independence and what some say is the best time of your life. House parties, booze, meeting new people, and not to mention the degree, of course. Alongside this valuable experience comes debt and the struggle to make ends meet. So what happens when some people feel the minimum wage and student loan isn't enough to keep their head above water? Some of the biggest student protests have taken place since 2011, when uni fees rose, which in turn has caused some pupils an extra £18,000 worth of debt. Last year, it was also revealed that maintenance grants were to be scrapped, which affects those especially from lower income backgrounds. Megan, an English literature student at Sussex University, explains how the cuts have let her down.
When I'd first applied for student finance, we'd gone on the basis of a two-parent household income. Unfortunately, just before coming to university, my mum got very ill and she had to leave employment. Therefore, we went down to under a £20,000 a year income for the household. With this in mind, I knew that any extras that I might need for university, I wouldn't be able to get covered by my parents. When calling up student finance, they had said to me that instead of getting more grant, they had lowered my loan, saying that if I was from a lower income household, that I would benefit more in the future if I had less to repay.
Missing out on the maintenance grant has had long-term effects for Megan and her family.
I've had to take out Vice-Chancellor loans from the university that I've struggled paying back. My parents had to take a loan out against the house to help me pay rent, which is something that they really didn't want to do.
This is just one example of the many students out there that are facing financial difficulties while studying. Although Megan hasn't resorted to sex work, a survey by the Student Sex Work Project found that 1 in 20 students do. 21-year-old Callie is one of them. Her voice has been manipulated and name changed to protect her identity.
I'm Callie, I'm 21, and I'm an ex-webcam artist and adult illustrator.
Webcamming involves performing in front of a webcam in exchange for money and can include anything from conversation to performing sexual acts to people online.
It started off when basically
My partner was like, hey, it'd be really cool if you would try this out. And because he already knew that I drew artwork that was a bit more inappropriate, he thought, maybe she'd be interested in this. And so I kind of looked into it. It didn't seem that bad if you can do it anonymously. It's, it's a fun way to make some extra money on the side, and it can be quite enjoyable.
It's not just webcamming that Callie has been taking on whilst at uni, but selling adult fantasy illustrations through forums with an online art community. This simply means that people online request for her to draw adult-themed illustrations, and she simply quotes them a price.
The art community I draw for is quite niche. It's a fandom online called the furry community, who have a huge interest in fantasy creatures and stuff. Animals drawn as humans makes it sound very bizarre, but it's kind of difficult to explain. That's something I've always drawn since I was younger, and it just so happened as I got older I started to see more of the inappropriate, I guess you could say, side of the fandom, and it just so happens you can make more money off drawing that kind of thing than you can drawing just, no nudity.
I was interested to know what lengths Callie had gone to artistically to meet her clients' needs. Although she is open-minded about the type of art she does, there is a point in some circumstances where she has to say no to certain requests.
One thing that a lot of artists do is we do have a terms of service, so we'll say in that things that we do, things that we don't, and that's just a way of sort of having a legal covering, even though we don't technically have any legal jurisdiction. So if somebody turns around and says, hey, can you draw this horrific torture porn, you can turn around and go, my terms of service says I don't do that. Sometimes people will come to you and say, can you draw this? And you're like, I really need that money, so you just do it, just, regardless of your morals.
After speaking to Callie, it seems that the flexibility of sex work, as well as the money involved, is a major influence into choosing the work, and might explain why students are making money this way instead of the more mainstream student jobs such as waitressing. Our chat did leave me feeling that in some cases, the money takes priority over the morals of those involved. So, we've heard from a student as to why they chose sex work, but what are the professionals saying about it? The Student Sex Work Project was a 3-year study which finished last year and was perhaps the most in-depth analysis done to date on student sex work. Results showed that, like Callie, student sex workers' motivations are centred on the need to generate money in a flexible way. It also revealed that universities do not include student sex work specifically in their policies, and some staff not only want guidance on the subject, but are concerned about how students in the job could affect the reputation of their university. So, back to my question, why is sex work seen as a taboo subject? Why are teachers worried about talking to their pupils about it, to the point where they want training? I sought advice from psychologist Mark Sargent, who specialised research in human sexual behaviour.
In the UK, we're very good at talking about sex in a kind of a casual or banter-like manner. But for example, we don't really discuss sex with our parents, with a lot of our close friends necessarily. If you think about the way that sex is handled officially in things like sex education, there's an extreme degree of reluctance to talk about this. And when you do get sex education, it tends to focus on biological issues and contraception. It doesn't cover the emotional side of sex. And there's still a pervasive idea that if you discuss sex, you encourage young people to have it.
I also asked Mark what he thought of the fact that 1 in 20 students are involved in the sex industry.
Not surprised, but just disappointed. I think that the financial pressures that people experience in going to university do mean that people sometimes do things they wouldn't do ordinarily. I also think that if you've got people who've been raised in a culture and an environment where sex is very widely available through the media, and they see that people can actually make quite a successful living through this, some people might be more tempted to do this. At the end of the day, I don't think anybody should ever have to do something they don't want to do. And my concern with people who go and work in the sex industry is, are they in some way being pressured financially or in another way into doing this? I find that quite surprising that people think that this kind of behaviour is a normal part of university life.
Following this research, it's not just women who have chosen the sex industry to support them while studying.
started stripping when I started studying. I always knew not to rely solely on the stripping though, which is why I crossed over into music as well.
Roy is 22. He strips and sings to support his time at uni.
I've always taken to a stage. I've always quite liked a stage. I like to be noticed. I like having an audience. And I tried catering work in the past. It just never really did anything for me. I'm not going to lie, the money helps a lot.
Strippers can earn up to £1,000 and more a night. Ironically, Roy says the work isn't all about getting your clothes off. He can be paid just to sit and chat to clubgoers. I surveyed 100 students in the East Midlands on their views on sex work. Just under half of them said they would strip to fund their uni life if they knew nobody would find out. Although the work boasts the chance to earn an impressive amount, it doesn't come without its risks, as Roy has learned firsthand.
Stripping is a very hard business to work in. You really need thick skin working around women. It can be really hard and demanding, even more so when they're drinking. As a male stripper, you have to put up with loads of abuse from women as well. Me personally, I've had drinks thrown at me, I've been badly scratched and punched in the face a few times. And that's not even extending to verbal abuse. But I've always remained really professional despite the behaviour.
I was shocked to hear of the treatment towards males in the industry.
I would definitely say there's a double standard in the industry. I think female strippers are seen as being women who need to be protected, and I'm not sure whether that's because of the audience that they're tending to, or whether they're seen as just being more vulnerable than male strippers.
It was obvious that Roy didn't feel safe in his environment and that he was willing to put himself through these experiences just to support his uni life. 22-year-old Lauren, who's worked as an escort, a webcam model, as well as selling suggestive pictures whilst at uni, was shocked when one of her clients threatened to reveal her secret job to her family.
Actually tried to chase me down before. They threatened my life. They even tried to expose it all to my family when I was 18. It was when I was at university, one guy recorded the show on Skype for external software and then threatened me with it, would tell me he would find me and make me do things, or he would tell my family.
After hearing the concerns of the sex workers I spoke to, I thought it would be important to speak to, a group who supports sex workers. Much to my astonishment, national groups such as POW, a charity supporting individuals involved in or affected by sex work, declined to speak to me. They said that they didn't feel comfortable giving advice on the matter, as not enough research had been done into student sex work. How are the young sex workers meant to get advice and support in this field when those that are there to help don't feel comfortable themselves in talking about it? Luckily, many universities and cities have drop-in clinics. I spoke to a volunteer from Nottingham's Rape Crisis Centre, which is a national charity. Due to maintaining the confidentiality of the counsellor I spoke to, I couldn't record in the building. However, she gave me some useful links, which you'll hear at the end of the programme. She said the best way to seek help and advice is online and through campaigns which have been started up to encourage people to speak out. Despite Lauren's scary experiences in the industry, she emphasised to me how much she needs this job and how she would be at a loss without it.
I need this job to be able to cope with living at university. I've got the minimum loan, it doesn't even cover my rent, and the only way I can pay to get through it is by using my body for it.
It seems student sex work is popular because of the income associated with it, but it does come with some serious risks, as you've heard from some of the people that opened up to me. Some final thoughts from researchers that carried out the Student Sex Project were that higher education institutions must recognise the presence of students who work in the sex industry. The stereotypes and misunderstandings about the student sex work need to be challenged, and institutions should take an explicit, non-inclusionary stance towards students who work in the sex industry, and matters of reputation should not be given preference over the protection and well-being of students. For support or advice on anything that you've heard in this podcast, go to www.rapecrisis.org.uk.
Wrapping your fingers around her late at night.